He was never chosen. From the first day of his life, James was just another name on a long list of children forgotten by the world. He grew up without hugs, without stories to tell, without anyone to tell him he mattered. The system raised him, but it never embraced him. He learned early on that life was a fairy tale. It was a lonely battle. Looking around, he saw other children being adopted, finding families, securing futures. But him? Year after year, his name remained on the list uncalled, as if he were invisible. By the age of 15, the truth became undeniable. He would never have a home. He would never be someone. And deep down, he began to believe that maybe he wasn't worthy of anything. Hope was a luxury he couldn't afford. While some children at the orphanage still dream of family, James closed himself off more and more. He believed the world was made for others, for those born in the right place with the right people. He was destined for a fate he didn't choose. But then, something happened. An unexpected conversation. A meeting that would change everything. A man, a stranger, looked at him differently. You don't need the world to choose you. Choose yourself first. Simple words, but they hit him like an electric shock. For the first time, James saw a different possibility. What if he could rewrite his own story? It was the first time he allowed himself to believe that maybe there was something beyond loneliness. But the path out of the darkness wouldn't be easy. For years, he had been convinced he was insignificant. How could he undo a lifetime of rejection? How could he learn to believe in himself when no one ever had? James didn't have the answers, but he decided to try. He started small. A book here, a free course there. He tried to understand how people who succeeded started from nothing and reached the top. And he discovered something that changed everything. Success wasn't about where you were born, but about the choices you made. The road ahead would be brutal. He would face humiliating failures, closed doors, moments of despair when everything seemed impossible. But something inside him had awakened, a fire that could no longer be extinguished. The invisible boy, he was never chosen. From the first day of his life, James was just another name on a long list of children forgotten by the world. He grew up without hugs, without stories to tell, without anyone to tell him he mattered. The system raised him, but it never embraced him. He learned early on that life was a fairy tale. It was a lonely battle. Looking around, he saw other children being adopted, finding families, securing futures. But him? Year after year, his name remained on the list uncalled, as if he were invisible. By the age of 15, the truth became undeniable. He would never have a home. He would never be someone. And deep down, he began to believe that maybe he wasn't worthy of anything. Hope was a luxury he couldn't afford. While some children at the orphanage still dream of family, James closed himself off more and more. He believed the world was made for others, for those born in the right place with the right people. He was destined for a fate he didn't choose. But then, something happened. An unexpected conversation. A meeting that would change everything. A man, a stranger, looked at him differently. You don't need the world to choose you. Choose yourself first. Simple words, but they hit him like an electric shock. For the first time, James saw a different possibility. What if he could rewrite his own story? It was the first time he allowed himself to believe that maybe there was something beyond loneliness. But the path out of the darkness wouldn't be easy. For years, he had been convinced he was insignificant. How could he undo a lifetime of rejection? How could he learn to believe in himself when no one ever had? James didn't have the answers, but he decided to try. He started small. A book here, a free course there. He tried to understand how people who succeeded started from nothing and reached the top. And he discovered something that changed everything. Success wasn't about where you were born, but about the choices you made. The road ahead would be brutal. He would face humiliating failures, closed doors, moments of despair when everything seemed impossible. But something inside him had awakened, a fire that could no longer be extinguished. And so began the transformation no one saw coming. The journey of a forgotten boy to one of the most successful entrepreneurs of his generation. But the greatest test was yet to come. The first step James knew he needed to break the cycle of victimhood and take the first step. But how? He had no money, no connections, no support. His only advantage was his mind, and he decided to use it to the fullest. He started with small jobs. He cleaned yards, delivered newspapers, did anything that would bring him some money. Meanwhile, he spent his nights studying at the public library, books on business, mindset, the psychology of success. He wanted to understand how the world worked and how he could find a place in it. But reality was still cruel. No matter how hard he tried, the feeling that he would never get out of the same place was overwhelming. Every failed attempt seemed to confirm that he wasn't capable, and doubt crept back into his mind. Was he deluding himself? It was then that he realized something important. Successful people had also failed countless times. The difference was that they kept going. He needed to keep going, even without hope, even without guarantees. With this new mindset, he decided to take a risk. He signed up for a free entrepreneurship seminar. On the day of the event, he wore his best clothes, which in reality were the only ones he had. He sat in the back row, absorbing every word spoken on stage. It was there that he heard a phrase that would change everything. If you don't create your own opportunity, no one will do it for you. Those words echoed in his mind. He finally understood wanting wasn't enough. He had to act. James was about to take a leap that would change his life forever. The first big rejection inspired and full of determination, James decided to put what he had learned into practice. He had an idea. He wanted to start a small delivery service in the neighborhood. With few resources but a lot of determination, he began knocking on doors, offering his service. But the response was a bucket of cold water. No one trusted an unknown kid. "You're too young," they said. "This won't work." The rejection was crushing. Every no felt like a reminder that he would never succeed. Frustration began to grow inside him, and for a moment, that old voice from the past returned. Maybe you really aren't good enough. But James was no longer the same. He knew that rejection was part of the process. Instead of giving up, he decided to change his approach. He went back to the library, studied persuasion techniques, watched sales videos, and prepared to try again. This time, he didn't just offer a service. He offered a solution. He talked to small local businesses and proposed something different, an efficient, affordable delivery system. At first, he still heard some rejections, but then a small market agreed to test his service. It wasn't much, but it was enough to prove he was on the right track. The first client was just the beginning. Soon, others began to see the value in what he was doing. Within a few months, James went from a rejected kid to someone, building a small delivery empire. But he didn't yet know that his greatest challenge was about to begin. The market strikes back. James's success began to attract attention. Small business owners, who had once ignored him, now saw his business model in action. But with visibility came challenges. Competitors began to emerge, some copying his idea and others trying to discredit him. More experienced entrepreneurs with deeper pockets slashed prices, making it nearly impossible for James to compete. James felt the impact immediately. Clients who had once been loyal began to test the new services, lured by lower prices and aggressive promises. For the first time, he saw his growth slow down, and within weeks, his revenue began to drop. He knew that entering a price war would be a mistake. If he tried to lower his prices, he wouldn't be able to maintain quality and would still lose money. But instead of playing competitors' game, James decided to bet on what set him apart: relationships. He began to connect even more with local businesses, offering closer service, personalized deliveries, and even creating a loyalty program. The strategy worked. While competitors were focused solely on volume and cost-cutting, James strengthened his client base and made them feel valued. He also realized he needed to innovate. He created a more agile delivery system, implementing a simple app for orders, something his competitors didn't have. This change improved the customer experience and gave his business new momentum. James was managing to hold his ground, but he knew it wouldn't be enough in the long run. If he wanted to grow for real, he needed something he had never had: a big investment. James was no longer just a kid trying to survive. His small business had become a promising operation, but it was limited by the resources he had. If he wanted to grow and compete at a higher level, he needed capital. But where would he find it? The meeting James prepared meticulously for his first meeting with an investor. He rehearsed his pitch, studied the market, and even sought advice from his mentor. When his turn came, he took a deep breath and began. The meeting happened shortly after. The investor was interested, but asked tough questions. How would he ensure expansion without losing quality? How would he handle larger competitors? James didn't have all the answers, but he had determination. He explained how he planned to scale the business, improve logistics, and most importantly, stay focused on differentiated service. After a long conversation, the investor made a decision. I'll invest in you, but on one condition: you need a mentor. James accepted without hesitation. The investment came, but with it, an even greater challenge: learning to navigate the corporate world. If before he was fighting to survive, now he had to prove he could manage $1 million business. He was about to enter the big leagues. But what he didn't know was that the business world could be even crueler than anything he'd faced so far. The corporate world, the investment, was a turning point for James. For the first time, he had enough capital to expand his company and compete at a higher level. But with the money came a new challenge: the corporate world. Until then, he had managed everything alone, relying on intuition and street-smart experience. Now, he had to deal with contracts, investor meetings, financial analysis, and growth strategies far beyond what he knew. The mentor the investor had recommended became crucial. This mentor, an experienced businessman named Richard, wasn't known for his patience. From day one, he made it clear that the investment wasn't a gift. It was a vote of confidence that needed to be justified with results. If you want to keep growing, you need to learn how to play the market game, he said. James immersed himself in this new world. He spent days and nights studying business management, marketing, and expansion strategies. He began delegating tasks, hiring qualified professionals, and structuring his company in ways he had never imagined. But this transition wasn't easy. The pressure was immense. At every investor meeting, he had to prove the company was evolving, and it was then that he made his first big mistake. Excited by the company's growth, James made a decision that seemed crucial: rapid expansion. He signed contracts with large supermarket chains, believing his team could handle the new demand. Opportunity and ambition mixed, and he found himself at the helm of a business growing at an accelerated pace. But what seemed like a major leap soon turned into a disaster. The company's structure wasn't ready for such a big jump. The lack of efficient logistics led to delays, delivery deadlines were compromised, and within a short time, complaints began pouring in. What had once been a differentiator, efficiency and close service, began to become a problem. The supermarket chains, which had initially seen potential in the company, began reconsidering the partnership. James's name, which had once symbolized resilience and innovation, was now associated with operational failures. Investors, once confident, began to show concern. The trust built over years was quickly eroding. Richard, his mentor, called an emergency meeting. His stern look revealed the gravity of the situation. You grew too fast. Growth without control is a direct path to failure. It was a hard blow to digest. For the first time, James felt he was about to lose everything he had built. The insecurity of the past returned with a vengeance. Would this be the end of his journey? Had he reached the limit of his abilities? But unlike before, he wasn't alone now. Some clients still believed in him. He needed to make a quick decision to avoid total collapse. James chose a bold plan. Slow down to save what he had built. He scaled back operations, renegotiated contracts, invested in restructuring logistics, and revamped internal processes. Instead of continuing to expand uncontrollably, he focused on quality. The following months were a test of patience and strategy. It was a difficult period, marked by constant adjustments, strategic decisions, and a complete overhaul of processes. But slowly, results began to show. The company regained its reputation. Clients returned to trusting the service, and investors saw that James was learning. This experience taught him a fundamental lesson. Growth without structure is an invitation to failure. Expanding a business isn't just about conquering new markets. It's about ensuring a solid foundation. James had survived another big test, but the greatest challenge of his journey was yet to come. The legacy, after months of adjustments, strategic cuts, and a complete restructuring, James felt his company was finally back on track. The chaos caused by uncontrolled growth had been contained, but he knew that merely surviving wasn't enough. It was time to turn things around. He began analyzing what successful companies had done to become market leaders. He realized that operational efficiency was the key to sustainable success. Companies didn't grow just because they had more clients. They grew because they could deliver quality at scale, without compromising the customer experience. He decided to invest heavily in technology. He created a real-time tracking system for deliveries, improved communication channels with clients, and implemented an app for faster, more organized orders. What had once been a small delivery business became a highly efficient service. This new model caught the attention of big investors again. This time, however, James was prepared. He didn't just want money. He wanted strategic partners who could help him grow in a structured way. And that's exactly what he got. A multinational logistics company expressed interest in his operation. They wanted an agile system like the one James had developed and, instead of buying him out, proposed a partnership that could elevate his business to a global level. James found himself facing the biggest decision of his life. It could mean sharing control of the company he had built from scratch. Refusing could mean losing the chance to turn his brand into something huge. For weeks, he weighed the pros and cons. He talked to his mentor, analyzed the potential consequences, and finally made a decision. He accepted the partnership, but on one condition. He would retain decision-making power over the company's direction. The investors agreed. And so, James went from running a small local business to commanding a company with international operations. He had finally achieved what once seemed impossible. But deep down, he knew this was just another stage of the journey. True success wasn't just about money or expansion. It was about the impact he could make. Now, he had something even bigger in mind. But to achieve it, he would need to face challenges far beyond the business world. The final chapter, now that his company had reached an international level, James could simply sit back and enjoy the fruits of his labor. However, something inside him said there was still more to do. He didn't just want to be a successful businessman. He wanted his story to mean something greater. Looking back, he remembered the orphanage, the lonely nights, and the feeling of being invisible to the world. He knew thousands of children were going through what he had experienced. And so, the idea came. He would use his influence and resources to create opportunities for vulnerable youth. His first project was a training program for teenagers from shelters and orphanages. The idea was simple: offer training, mentorship, and job opportunities within his own company. He wanted to give these young people something he had never had, someone who believed in them. The impact was immediate, but James wanted more. He decided to create a fund to finance businesses started by young entrepreneurs who, like him, came from difficult situations. His company began investing directly in promising ideas, helping transform lives through entrepreneurship. The media began reporting on the impact of his work. The boy who had once been forgotten by the system was now an example of resilience and generosity. He wasn't just a successful businessman. He was a force for change. But James's journey wasn't over yet. The more he achieved, the more he realized that true success wasn't in the numbers, but in the lives he could transform. And he still had one last big goal to achieve. The foundation with his company consolidated and his social projects growing, James decided to create a foundation to ensure his initiatives would continue for generations. The foundation would help children and teenagers find a way out of the cycle of poverty, offering education, housing, and support so they could build their own futures. Over the years, James became a respected name, not only in the business world, but also in the social sector. He proved that it was possible to turn difficulties into opportunities, and that no one should be defined by their past. Now, looking back, he saw not just a boy rejected by the system, but a man who decided to change his own story, and in the process, helped rewrite the stories of thousands of others. His legacy was set. James had become more than a businessman, more than a well-known name. He had become a symbol of resilience. His journey inspired thousands around the world, proving that no one needs to be defined by their beginnings. In every young person he helped, his name would echo for generations. But for him, The most important thing was never fame or recognition. True success was knowing that his pain hadn't been in vain, that his journey had become a path for others to follow.